All right, this is going to be a solution to advanced version number 2, where we're going to use an array that will let us tally the votes for more than 3 candidates. It could be as many candidates as we want. So let's change the tester first. What we want to do is change the constructor so that we give it a number that represents how many candidates are going to be in this race. And then we can cast votes for various candidates. Yeah, I think that nothing else changes. It's just that now we're supporting lots of different candidates. Let's make that 4. All right, so let's go ahead and change my solution to the target version. So originally we had a separate variable for the number of votes for each different candidate. Instead of that, we're going to create an array. So instead of an int variable, int bracket bracket means an int array. I'm going to call it candidates. And I'm going to just declare the variable there. All right, so now inside vote results, the constructor, remember we need to take an input. That's how many candidates we're going to have. So I'm going to take an input that I'll call num. And we're going to use this to create the array to be the size we want. So candidates equals new int array sized num. I don't need to initialize every int variable in this array to 0 because that happens automatically. So they all start out as 0. All right, so let's do cast vote. So I'm going to do this in sort of 2 steps to help you think about how this makes sense as an array. So we still want a number here that represents which number candidate do we want to vote for. We'll come back to this in a second. So you might think we could do this. We'll test if number 0, if the input number is 0, then we want to take candidate's location 0 and we want to add 1. And that's not wrong. That's right. We do want to add 1. It's just that there's going to be a shorter way to do it. So a beginner who wasn't used to thinking in terms of arrays yet would do this as a solution. So this person is using the array, but they're still thinking about the array as if it's a bunch of individual variables. So a major problem with this is if we created an array for 5 candidates, we don't have enough if statements. We only have enough if statements for 3. I mean, you could add 2 more if statements, but what if we had 100 candidates in the race? Now you wouldn't probably want to have 100 if statements. So here's what I want you to notice. If number was equals 0, if number equaled 0, remember number is the candidate we're voting for. So if number is 0, we're accessing location 0. If number is 1, we're accessing location 1. If number is 2, we're accessing location 2. So the idea is the location that we're accessing is always the same as the number inside the num variable. So what that lets us do is we can just do all of these things on one line. We can say candidates num equals candidates num plus 1. Notice why this is going to do the same thing. Let's pretend num is 0. In that case, this line of code is really saying candidates 0 equals candidate 0 plus 1. So we're adding 1 to location 0. Same thing for if number was equal to 1. If num equals 1, then we're saying candidates 1 equals candidates 1 plus 1. So we're adding 1 to location 1. So in general, we're really saying num is the location of the candidate we're interested in tallying. So we're saying go to the candidates list right at that location and add 1 at that location. All right, so that's great. We've made this whole thing a lot shorter. The only danger is, what if this number is not a valid number? What if they try and cast a vote for candidate 5,000 or candidate -3? So we have to put an if statement beforehand that makes this safe. So I'm going to say if the number is less than 0, I know that's not valid, or if the number is larger than, let's see, I need to know how many candidates are in our list. So that's candidates.length, because remember, length gives us the length of the list. It's actually greater than or equal to would be invalid, because let's say that the list had 3 things in it. In that case, candidates.length is going to be 3, but I can't use 3 as a location number, because location numbers are only 0, 1, and 2. So in other words, if the number I'm trying to access is equal to the length of the list, that's actually going to be 1 larger than the largest location in the list. So I'm saying if number is less than 0 or off the end of the list, then I'm going to immediately return without doing anything. All right, so that is not only more powerful, but it's also shorter than the version where we had 3 separate variables. All right, let's keep it going. So get total votes for number. We got the same thing here. I could say if number equals 0, then candidates location 0, candidates location 1, and so on. But really, what we're trying to say is I'm just going to return candidates at whatever number location the input told me. We got to do the same thing that we did last time, though, is before we just look in the array, we have to make sure that this number is not out of bounds for the array. We have to make sure it's not outside the array. So I'm going to have this same if statement, and I'm going to say if the number is too small for the array or it's too large for the array, then I'm going to return 0 because that person must have gotten 0 votes. All right, time for get winner. So this one's maybe a little less obvious. The winner is going to be whoever has the most votes. So in other words, we have to figure out which location in this array has the largest number. So here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to visit every single location in the array, and I'm going to be keeping track of what's the largest number of votes I've seen so far. So let's do that. Largest so far is going to be candidates 0. So I'm starting off with the assumption that candidate 0 is the winner because they've got the largest so far. That's probably wrong, and I'm probably going to change this later, but that's how we're going to start. And that means winner is 0. So now I'm going to loop over different locations. So I'm going to start my location at location 1. I'm going to go to the end of the candidates list. And for every single candidate, I'm going to check, I'm going to check, did that candidate get more votes than the largest so far? So I'm going to check if if the candidate at location lock is larger than the largest so far. So in other words, let's say lock is location 1, which is where the loop starts. I'm checking, did location 1 get more votes than the largest so far? If the answer is yes, then I'm going to change the winner to be location 1, and I'm going to reset the largest so far to be this number that was actually larger. So again, I'm looping through every single location, and I'm asking, is that location larger than the largest one I've seen so far? And if I do that for all of them, I know that by the time I'm at the end of the list, I must have stored the largest one in there. Okay, well, I just typed 1 here, but that was just for my example where I was thinking about 1. Let's pretend later on location is equal to 4, and candidates location 4 is larger than the largest so far. In that case, I would want to assign 4 as the winner. And in general, it's like I would want to assign whatever location I just looked in. That's going to be who the winner is, because that location contained the largest number of votes so far. So now that I've done this whole loop to find the maximum in the list, I can just return the winner, and I'm done. That might have seemed kind of complicated, and if I had my document camera here, I think it would have been a lot clearer if I'd drawn a picture. Unfortunately, I don't. This kind of pattern here is a lot more common for like what you'll see when you take the AP class. Okay, I hope that made sense. Oh, I guess let's test it. So let's cast votes for 1 a couple of times. Let's cast a whole bunch of votes for candidate 4. All right, great. So now I'll run it. Oh, and I'm not printing anything out yet. So actually, system.out.println, candidate 0 got. And then we'll see how many candidate 0 got. And same thing here, System.out.println. Whoops. Winner is. All right, so let's run it. Candidate 0 got 2 votes, winner is candidate 4. Great.